and thank you for standing by. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode until the question and answer session of today's conference. At that time, you may press star 1 on your phone to ask a question. I would like to inform all parties that today's conference is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. I will now turn the call over to Josh Finch. Thank you. You may begin.
Good afternoon and welcome from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. I'm Josh Finch with NASA's Office of Communications. We're here to discuss NASA's SpaceX Crew-1 mission, the first crew rotation flight of the SpaceX Crew-Dragon spacecraft on a Falcon 9 rocket to the International Space Station as a part of NASA's Commercial Crew program. The Crew-1 flight will carry NASA astronauts Michael Hopkins, Victor Glover, Shannon Walker, and Soichi Noguchi of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency to the International Space Station for a 6-month science mission. Teams from NASA, SpaceX, and more just completed the flight readiness review for the mission, and senior representatives here to talk more about the important review are Kathy Leaders, Associate Administrator for Human Explorations and Operations Mission Directorate at NASA headquarters, Steve Stitch, Manager, NASA's Commercial Crew Program, Joel Montalbano, Manager, International Space Station Program for NASA at the Johnson Space Center, Norm Knight, Deputy Manager of Flight Operations Directorate at Johnson Space Center, Benji Reed, Senior Director, Human Spaceflight Programs at SpaceX, Junichi Sakai, Manager, International Space Station Program from JAXA, and Randy Repchik, Director, Operational Safety at the Federal Aviation Administration. We'll start with opening comments from our presenters and then take your questions. As a reminder, to get into the question queue, you can press star 1 on your phone. And for now, we'll start with opening comments from Kathy.
Well, this is a very exciting day, for those of us that have been looking forward to this day for a really long time. It is pretty inspiring to sit here in a room as we're really getting ready to fly our Crew-1 mission. And as we sat here and we looked at all the work that the team had done to carefully review all the data on both the station program side and the commercial crew side and SpaceX, for us to be able to go then get ready to go execute this mission this weekend, it was pretty awe-inspiring. And flight readiness reviews are kind of a first of our final countdown steps towards flight, and an important checkpoint for us to make sure we're ready to go into this final operational phase. But as I was sitting here today, I thought of that this is really a first day of this journey into us going into this mission, but there's a ton of other firsts that happened today. This was our first flight readiness of our first crew rotation mission for a commercial crew flight. Our first overall human rating certification for a commercial provider. The first crewed certification, looking at a 210-day capability of a commercial crewed transportation capability. Our first international partner flight on a commercial vehicle. I'm so happy to have Soguchi-san, our JAXA crew member, flying. Very, very exciting day. And also our first FAA licensed crewed mission. We're doing this a little bit differently, and it involves partnerships with both the FAA and the FCC and our other partners across the government to be able to go achieve this. This is a big day, but the next few days are going to be big days too, and we're going to have to be stepping carefully through our final readiness for this flight. And this thorough review today and everyone's approval to move forward was a great first step towards flight. So thank you, and I'm looking forward to hearing the questions, and happy you guys are all here and interested in this great milestone here. Steve's next.
Thank you, Kathy. It is a pleasure to be here representing the Commercial Crew Program today. As Kathy said, the FR is really that first step as we get into this final week of preparations for launch. Kathy talked about a lot of firsts. For us in the U.S., it's the first time we've ever flown 4 people on a capsule as well, and this flight will be the longest flight ever for the U.S., exceeding the record held back in Skylab on the 3rd Skylab flight. We're ready to go execute the flight in the Commercial Crew Program. We're honored to be here doing the first mission for space station rotations, and honored to fly our first JAXA crew member, Soichi, on this mission. We got through the FRR, and we went through a lot of topics, and when I thought about the FRR today, I thought about a lot of the people that have worked so hard for so many years to get us here. In particular, if you step back and think about where we've been since the Demo 2 landing, which was just 3 months ago, we worked through a couple of big topics that we've talked about already on Demo 2, the repairs to the Dragon heat shield around the compression pads and the tension ties. We improved that area on this vehicle. We improved the vent system to make sure that we deploy the drogues at the altitude that they should be deployed at. We're flying a lot of upgrades on this flight compared to Demo 2. We have new solar arrays that'll give us that capability to fly 210 days. We have an improved landing capability with some of the structural elements around the capsule to allow us to land in a little bit higher wind. We have a port relocation capability so that we can relocate the ports from the forward port on the Node 2 Zenith to the Zenith port. We also have upgrades to the Falcon 9 to improve the turbine wheels and the composite overwrap pressure vessels and many other systems. So we continue to evolve and be safer as we move toward these flights. Heading into the next few days, and Benji will talk a little bit more about the schedule, we're going to do a little bit of work on the vehicle, and Benji will get into the details to replace a valve on the 2nd stage. We'll go horizontal today, and we were planning to do a static fire today. We'll move that 1 day to the right to Wednesday, with a dry dress with the crew on Thursday. Still looking at a launch right now on Saturday, Eastern Time, at 7:49 p.m. Eastern for that launch time. The weather's looking good for that first opportunity on Saturday, and we have a backup also on Sunday. We're going to step through things very methodically, just like we did at the Flight Readiness Review. We'll continue to review the data at the Dragon management team and at the LRR later this week, as we look at the vehicle systems on both Dragon and Falcon, and as we step toward our first launch for the space station program to fly an increment mission. With that, I'll turn it over to Joel from the Space Station Program Manager.
Thank you, Steve. Well, good afternoon. It's great to be here today. We had a really good review these last 2 days. For a number of years, the ISS and Commercial Crew programs have worked hand in hand to get ready for this event. We walk out of this review being ready and looking forward to these last few days as we prepare for a launch on Saturday. As far as ISS, this year we celebrate 20 years of continuous human presence on board the International Space Station. We've set the standard for international cooperation, and we continue to be busy on orbit. We had a crew change out in October. That went extremely well. Kate and the 2 Sergeys are on board. They're rocking and rolling, and they're ready for the Commercial Crew vehicle to come, where we'll step up to 7 crew members for a continuous number of months on board, where we utilize this great space station that we've built over time. So with that, I want to thank you, and I'll hand it over to Norm Knight.
Well, let's see. Thanks, Joel. Today was a great readiness review, or the culmination thereof. On day 1, the commander, Mike Hopkins, kind of kicked it off and had opening statements that really was thanks to the team and really expressing the trust to the teams for what we all collectively do to assure their safety, which was a great way to start things. This is an important review, and is to assure that NASA and SpaceX deliberately assess those risks to assure that crew safety is number 1. And coming out of here, I can assure you that crew safety is number 1. That was readily apparent, and these teams are ready to go accomplish the mission objectives during this increment. As Kathy said, this is the first crew rotational operational flight. We're excited for that with our SpaceX provider. This is another seamless example of being able to work hand in hand with our commercial and international partners for training, flight operations, and mission execution. Crew's doing great. They're excited about the FRR decision to go to proceed. They're doing very well. The days leading to launch will consist of the crew watching static fire, dry dress rehearsal with the integrated team and participating in that, a host of medical checks and final briefings to get them ready to go, all culminating with a launch on Saturday. We're very excited to be part of this amazing team and look forward to a successful launch on Saturday. And with that, I'll turn it over to Benji.
Great. Thank you, Norm. First of all, before I even start my formal remarks, I just want to note that I look around the room and I see not only partners but friends. It's been an excellent journey over these many years to get us to this point. It's not only the development of the Crew Dragon system and the human-rated Falcon 9 system, and all of the efforts of all of our teams to put this together, but it's really the culmination in this launch that brings us to operational status, full operational status, where we'll be able to provide that continuous rotation that the station needs for crew and as well as cargo. And it's a lot of years and a lot of work together to get there. So it's really cool to see everybody. On that note, in 4 days, together with our NASA partners, we'll be launching the first operational mission to the space station with astronauts on board, 4 astronauts this time. And also, as of note, NASA announced today that we have now certified SpaceX to support human space flight missions, and we are honored to be the nation's launch provider for crew missions and take seriously the responsibility that NASA has entrusted to us to carry American astronauts to and from the space station. Honestly, we couldn't be more proud of what we've already accomplished together, and I really do want to thank NASA on behalf of all of the SpaceX employees and our vendors and all of our other partners for giving us this opportunity. And as always, I want to thank the astronauts and their families, thank JAXA as well for entrusting the astronauts, their lives with us to bring them up to station safely, keep a lifeboat there for them, and also bring them home safely to their families. That's always in the forefront of our minds. As mentioned already, we've got the go today for our flight readiness. And I'll talk a little bit now about our preparations and where we're heading from here for that. Last Wednesday, Dragon was transported from our processing facility on Cape Canaveral Air Force Station to Launch Complex 39A and has been integrated with the Falcon 9. And last night, the rocket and spacecraft rolled out of the hangar and went vertical ahead of an integrated static fire test. As part of our standard checkouts, we identified a component that we want to swap on the second stage purge system. We will come horizontal to do that, likely later today. We'll do that work right there on the pad and then go back vertical. We will then static fire tomorrow, just as we've done prior to Crew Dragon's 2 demonstration missions. And once we static fire and that's complete, we'll do the data check, go through all of that information that we gather from the very important static fire operation, and then proceed towards dry dress with the astronauts. And dry dress is that dress rehearsal like we did on Demo 2. Again, a very important step to get everybody ready, make sure we've kind of checked out the whole process. The astronauts get suited up, head out to the pad, and actually get into Dragon. We'll go through that process on Thursday, and then there'll also be an amount of late load cargo that gets put into the vehicle before launch. We still have ahead of us, in terms of reviews, our launch readiness review, our LRR, as was mentioned earlier. We need to get that done. That is currently planned for Thursday as well. But as of now, everything is looking good for our instantaneous launch attempt at 7:49 and 50 seconds p.m. local here on the East Coast on Saturday. And if we, for any reason, we can't make that launch, we have a backup on Sunday as well. Very similar timing, a few minutes earlier at 7:27 and 15 seconds p.m. Eastern. We'll talk a little bit about the weather, which of course we're keeping a very close eye on right now, and we'll continue to monitor as the days move on here. The launch criteria is very similar for our previous Falcon 9 missions, but we also need to make sure that in the unlikely event of an emergency downrange where we need to do an emergency ejection from Dragon from Falcon 9, we want to make sure that we have the correct recovery conditions for Dragon in terms of winds and waves at sea. We need to make sure those are met before liftoff. That always makes for additional constraints to making sure that we've got the right weather, not only here at the launch and along the center path, but but at the sea where Dragon might need to come down. Downrange weather in that context is monitored at more than 50 locations along the ascent track, and that goes up along the North American eastern seaboard and across the northern Atlantic. So there's quite a few points that we look at to make sure we've got the right weather to keep the crew safe. The probability of violation is calculated at each location, including limit conditions for winds, waves, lightning, and precipitation. So again, we watch that all very closely. And then lastly, in case there was an abort that we had to do on the pad, where we actually do a launch escape on the pad, we've got NASA and our DET-3 and SpaceX recovery teams are on standby and capable of supporting a recovery at any time. Finally, the public service announcement, if you will. While we'd certainly share in the public's excitement about human spaceflight and getting to watch launches, and we hope lots of people come out and watch the launches safely with masks and properly socially distanced, of course. But we do ask that if there were at any point in this first part of the mission, and certainly in 6 months when we come back home after recovery, that we ask that all boaters respect all notifications and guidance from our partners at the Coast Guard and the Navy. Any distraction or interference to those operations can cause significant delays and actually can put the crew themselves and our recovery teams at risk. So please keep that in mind. Finally, I want to say something that I think is pretty amazing as we look ahead to the operations for this flight, but really for the upcoming number of months. Over the next 15 months, we will fly 7 crew and cargo Dragon missions for NASA. That means that starting with Crew-1, there will be a continuous presence of SpaceX Dragons on orbit. And starting with the cargo mission, CRS-21, every time we launch a Dragon, there will be 2 Dragons in space simultaneously for extended periods of time. This partnership with NASA and the opportunity that it's provided for us at SpaceX and all of our teams means that truly we are returning the United States capability for full launch services, and we are very, very honored to be a part of that. On behalf of all the SpaceX employees, we are grateful for the opportunity to fly NASA astronauts as well as cargo to the International Space Station, and we look forward to a successful mission ahead. Thank you.
And we'll next go to Junichi Sakai.
Thank you for introducing me. I appreciate all people working for this project under COVID-19 situation and giving us such an honorable opportunity to make a statement. As I reported earlier at the FRR Flight Readiness Review, we made the decision go. We JAX, including astronaut Soichi Noguchi, are ready for the launch. In July, the Joint Exploration Declaration of Intent for Lunar Cooperation was signed between Government of Japan and NASA. The human space activity will expand from the ISS to LEO, the Moon, and beyond in the future. We look forward to enjoying the beginning of a new LEO operation with ISS international partners during this period of change. I'm honored to witness this memorable event and proud that Japanese astronaut Dr. Noguchi is fulfilling his responsibility as a member of this event. Astronaut Noguchi has flown in space twice before, and he was always been challenging. By flying Crew-1, he will experience 3 different types of spacecraft which is used in ISS program. This would be a world first, I heard. He's going to take on the big challenge of boarding a new spacecraft and a long duration staying on the ISS. And I hope that he and the other NASA astronaut colleagues will succeed in this memorable mission with full concentration. We are looking forward to the launch on Saturday and making final preparations. Thank you.
And our final speaker will be Randy Repchek. Randy?
Thank you. So we in the FAA look forward to this historic event, along with Department of Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao. This is historic for us because it's the first orbital human space flight licensed by the FAA. We've licensed suborbital launches with flight crew, but not orbital launches, and certainly none with NASA. For this mission, the FAA is going to license both the launch of the Falcon 9 launch vehicle and the reentry of the Dragon 2 reentry vehicle. We do not license the on-orbit activities. Now, our focus is on public safety, ensuring that members of the public are safe during planned and unplanned events. And this is similar to our role in licensing launches and reentries without crew, which we've done for 3 decades. For both of these licenses that we're issuing, the FAA has worked very closely with the tremendous teams at SpaceX, NASA, and the Air Force. And of course, with NASA, we've had a very close relationship with them throughout the commercial crew program. And it's been a great partnership so that we can ensure a smooth transition between the earlier flights and these licensed flights. So, thank you very much, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you for those comments, Randy. And we'll now begin with our media question and answer portion. And remember to ensure that as many people get to answer or ask a question, please only ask one per reporter. And if we can go back around within the time we have, we'll do so. And we'll start our question portion with Marcia Dunn from the Associated Press. Marcia?
Yes, hi. 2 quick timing questions. First for Benji, how much more can you delay the test firing and still meet a Saturday launch attempt? And for Steve, as the year comes to a quick close, what's the earliest you would anticipate the Starliner test flight repeat? Thanks a lot.
Hi, Marcia. In terms of delay, the operation that we have to do really will just take a couple of hours. So I'm not too worried about needing to delay further. We do have a little bit more time. More importantly, though, is that we gather a lot of important data from static fire, and so we'll want to evaluate the timing that we have. Like when we do actually static fire, how much time do we have to evaluate that data, step into the dry dress with the astronauts, and then also step into our launch readiness review. So my sense is that there's really no worries here about running out of time to do it. I think that we'd still want to get static fire done, relatively quickly so we can evaluate that data.
Hey, Marcia, from a perspective of the next Starliner flight, which is the reflight of the orbital flight test, right now we've been working hand in hand with Boeing. They've done a tremendous amount of work on their vehicle. They continue to process that vehicle for OFT. The pacing item really is getting the software ready to go and then turning that into the products that come over to NASA. Right now, the earliest we would go fly that flight would be the first quarter of next calendar year, calendar year 21. And then as they continue to make progress on the flight software and the testing of that software, we'll be able to refine that data a little bit better.
Our next question will come from Bill Harwood, CBS News.
Hey, Benji, a quick one for you, and I was going to ask you about the valve you're replacing, but if you want me to limit it to one, here's my one. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of getting this stage back, this first stage back, recovered and refurbished? How does refurbishment for a commercial crew flight differ from what you would do for any recovered booster? Because I guess you're going to fly this booster on the Crew-2 mission. Can you just kind of talk about that and the importance of making sure you get this recovery? Thanks.
Sure, Bill, absolutely. We always want to recover as many boosters as we can. It's an important part of, long-term making spaceflight, reliable and affordable in the ways that we envision the future. And you learn a lot from every booster no matter what. That's kind of a big picture view. Specifically for this mission, we want to recover that booster because we plan to refurbish and reuse it for the upcoming crew mission, the next one, Crew-2. And so it's very important that we also recover it for that purpose as well. In terms of differences that we might use or that we might do for crew program versus other programs, at the end of the day, by far, the actual refurbishment process is essentially the same. And it's a very important point. Whether we're building something new or refurbishing it, whatever our processes are, we try very hard to make them the same. We want to have the same vehicle and design configurations. We want to have the same processes between all of our different launches because we want that flight reliability to be maintained at the highest of levels. And also consistency and practice add to your reliability. They add to your assurance that things will go well because people are doing the same things every time. They understand those processes, and we only have to keep one set of processes. But specific to Crew, it's important that we're going to meet the requirements of the Crew program, right? We've, over the last number of years, of course, there's the initial set of requirements that the contract brought to us. There's all of the interpretations and agreements that we've built with NASA to ensure that we're truly safely flying those astronauts. And those requirements need to be met regardless of whether it's a new booster or a refurbished booster or a flight-proven booster. And so we need to make sure that you know, as we go through that the booster still meets that. And a lot of what we're looking at then are what are the environments the booster saw on return. Is there, you know, anything that we're worried about in terms of life on any of the components, and how that might, you know, if we need to replace components because of life concerns or because of environmental concerns, that might drive, you know, a little bit of additional work that we do on that refurbishment. But by far and large, it's the same, and we work closely with NASA to ensure that we've meeting the requirements and keeping the crew safe.
And our next question will come from Irene Klotz, Aviation Week.
Hi, sorry, I think I was on mute. My question is, first question is for Benji. If you could give us a little more detail about what the issue was with the valve and what the upshot was with the review of the GPS-3 launch as far as the engine and the masking issue. And for probably for Steve, were there any waivers that are going to need to be processed for ahead of this launch? Thanks.
Sure, I can. I'll start first of all on the current issue. What we've identified that basically there's a piece that's called a purge orifice that we got an anomalous reading on. And what we want to do is we want to just go ahead and come down and swap that so that we make sure we've got the, you know, getting the right reading. So we'll swap that particular orifice out. It kind of just looks like a T fixture component of the purge system, and we'll swap that, double check everything looks right, go through all the checks again, and then of course static fire for a verification that everything's great there. In terms of the GG that we were working on, that gas generator issue that we were working on before, I think that was a great example of the good work that our team and the NASA teams do to work together to understand, get down to root cause on that, understand what was happening there, and nothing really different than what we've all talked about before in terms of, you know, getting down to that root cause and understanding how that occur, how we can get those early starts to occur, and a very thorough job by the teams here to assess that data, to assess that root cause, and then in a deep dive review at the flight readiness review yesterday and today to make sure that all of the senior leadership understood that and concurred with those outcomes. So I think we feel very good about that process going forward. And I'll hand it over to Steve for the other question, and if he wants to add to the GG at all.
Yeah, I'll add to the GG anomaly, the gas generator anomaly. I mean, we worked hand in hand with Benji and his team working through that anomaly over the last month. You know, I think we got to a really good place. Many times when you have something happen, you actually don't find root cause, but here we were able to go find the engines that had this blockage in these very small bores, these very small passages that caused that valve to open early. On our vehicle, we were able to inspect all the engines. We inspected the engine, the MVAC engine and all 9 M1Ds on the first stage. We ended up, we know 7 of those engines were good. We swapped 2 of those engines out with one of them we actually took an engine on the vehicle and replaced a component and put it back in. The other one, we started with a new engine. We reviewed all the data on those 2 new engines. All that data looks good. Then we also took another step with SpaceX and the NASA team and looked across the launch vehicle for any other areas that might have a small passage that could get blocked by this similar masking process, and we cleared all that hardware. So I feel really good about this vehicle and the anomaly investigation going forward. In terms of waivers, I was looking at my package here, and I don't have a good summary. You know, every flight has waivers. We can get you that number of waivers. We've approved a number of waivers in our program for all the flights, and we can get you that. It's on the order of 100 or so total between Dragon and F9, and we can get you the exact number. So there was nothing really, even with the gas generator anomaly, there was only, I would say, one special area that we looked at, one of the turbine wheels. We looked specifically at this turbine wheel. We had not done an analysis of it before, and that was probably the one thing we took extra time as we headed into this FRR on one of the engines that was swapped out. So.
Our next question will come from Gina Sinceri at ABC News.
This is for Norm Knight. Norm, we all know this is challenging enough without a pandemic, but the crew chose to name this mission Resilience. Does that name resonate with you, and if so, why?
Let's see. Hello, Gina. Thank you for the question. Absolutely. I mean, you know, we were talking the other day, if you step back and rewound, 7 months and said, wow, we have, the first demo commercial crew flight. We have, making sure that space station is maintained and managed, and we keep astronauts safe on board and accomplish all the mission objectives. And then look ahead and say, wow, we want to launch the first, commercial operational flight as well. You'd look at that and you'd say, wow, that's pretty daunting. It'd be hard on just in normal circumstances. But, resilience absolutely resonates, I think, with me and the rest of the team, because that's what it takes. It takes a team to go off and look at things. You might not know that exact path on how to proceed, but as a team, you look through all the different lenses, you get as much information as you can, and you make a decision, and you go forward. And what we call it is we hit the guardrails and recenter, as long as you don't go off the cliff. And that's what our teams do. They're constantly cross-checking each other and making sure we're going forward in a safe manner, making certain that our workforce is safe, and again, that our flight crews are safe, and our teams are safe in managing of them. So, absolutely. It's a very powerful name, and I think it's very telling of the journey to get us to this flight and to make this successful. So thank you for the question.
Our next question is from Paul Brinkman, CPI.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. I would just like for somebody to explain what happens if there is a scrubber delay on Saturday. I think the astronauts mentioned that a launch on Sunday would mean a much longer flight, or that some kind of a delay would mean a much longer flight. Could somebody just explain that, I guess, Steve, possibly?
Yeah, I think if I got the question right, this is Steve Stitch. The question was the time between launch and docking on Saturday versus Sunday. If I remember correctly, the way things line up on Saturday, it's a shorter time between docking, launch and docking. It's like 8.5 hours. And then if we slip one day, it's more of the normal time frame. It's about 27 hours from launch to dock, and that's just due to the way the orbital mechanics lines up.
And our next question is from Eric Berger at Ars Technica.
Yeah, hi. Good afternoon, and congratulations to everyone for getting this far. Wondering if Steve or someone could talk to me about the time frame for Crew-2 and Crew-3. It sounded like, given the uncertainty about the OFT-2 flight, you're probably going to need those two missions at least for Crew next year. And so, are we looking at spring, fall? Can you give any better sort of fidelity on those dates? Thanks.
This is Joel Montalbano. I'll start and then hand over to Steve. We're looking we're telling the team to work to a March 30th readiness date, so the late March readiness date. And then depending on how we work the Soyuz traffic, we'll have Crew-2 ready to go. And then in the late summer, early fall, we'll be working for the third mission. And so again, there's a lot of things that have to happen between now and then, but that's kind of generally big picture at a 100,000-foot level what we're looking at.
And for us, the important thing for Crew-2 is we're reusing the Dragon capsule that we flew on the Demo 2 mission. It's here at the Kennedy Space Center in Dragonland and getting refurbished, and that refurbishment's going really well. And then again, as we alluded to earlier, we're going to reuse the booster that's going to fly Crew-1 and refurbish that and get that ready. So very important for us to hit that date, and we know how important the missions are for Space Station to go fly. And we'll be setting up for these kind of rotations with a spring kind of mission and a fall kind of mission for the Space Station 6-month rotations.
And our next question is from Stephen Clark at Spaceflight Now.
Thank you, Stephen Clark, Spaceflight Now. I think my question might be for Steve as well, or maybe Joel. What's the planned duration for the Crew-1 mission, and when will Crew-1 be coming back in relation to the Crew-2 target date at the end of March? And also, Steve, you mentioned some upgrades to the Falcon 9 on the turbine wheels and the COPVs. I remember hearing about those upgrades a while back. Is this the first Falcon 9 flight to actually fly these upgrades to the COPVs and the turbine wheels? And can you add some detail about what's different about those pieces of hardware on this vehicle? Thank you.
Start with the landing date. We haven't really put forth a landing date per se yet for Crew-1. The vehicle is certified for 210 days capability. You know, most of the station missions are about 6 months in duration, so if you kind of look at that time frame in the spring, we'll find the right landing opportunity. Right now, we're setting up the flights. Joel and I have worked hand in hand to make sure we have an overlap, right? You need to have a handover between the crews. When we get there, about 7 to 10 days. Right now, we're planning a March 30th crew readiness launch date for Crew-2, and a landing of this flight in the April timeframe. We've got that nice. We've got about a 30-day kind of overlap right now in planning. The second question was relative to the upgrades. The turbine wheels that have been upgraded, those have been flying for a long time on the second stage of F9, and they've also flown on the first stage, so this is not the first flight with those new turbine wheels for us. First flight for Crew, but not the first flight of an F9, and the same thing with the changes to the composite overwrap pressure vessel, the changes in the liner, those have been flying before, but this is the first time for Crew. So we always like to see them fly on a flight or two in the fleet, and we get great surveillance of those flights that SpaceX flies. We get all the data from the flights and look at the performance. So hopefully that answers your questions.
And our next question is from Hanukkah Wettering at Space.com.
Hi, this is Hanukkah Wettering. Thank you for taking my question. I'm guessing this is for either Steve or Kathy. I'm wondering, so because with the Demo 2 launch, we saw pretty huge crowds down at Cape Canaveral, despite Jim Bridenstine asking people to stay home because of the pandemic. So I'm wondering if NASA is planning to do anything differently to mitigate the crowd sizes around KSC for the Crew-1 launch, or if you're not expecting as big of a turnout as with Demo 2. Thanks.
Well, I think we're expecting a large turnout. I mean, I think, but we are counting, and we're we talked about it before, and Benji did that. We do want folks to celebrate with us. This is a big celebration. We are, being careful on site on how we're allowing people to come on, and being careful about separation and numbers of folks that are coming on site. We do want people to be careful when they're out there. I know from a NASA and SpaceX perspective, and I'm sure a JAXA perspective, we'd be really sad if this was a super spreader event. This would not be good for us. So we do really want you guys, just like we're taking care of our crew members, we want you to take care of yourself and wear your masks and, figure out how to get your 6 feet on the beach and, come out and enjoy what I'm sure is going to be a spectacular launch. We want you to be careful, right? Just like we are careful. So, we're in a time, I appreciate what Norm was saying about in the crew, in the name of resilience. This is the time for us to be resilient. it's also a time for us for celebration. We want you to celebrate safely. So we are continuing to kind of send that message. We also understand people do want to celebrate with us. So we're kind of trying to balance those two things, and we will need your help balancing them.
And our next question comes from Emory Kelly, Florida Today.
Hey, folks. Good afternoon. I think maybe this question might be for Kathy, though I know it's probably maybe a little bit more for the Space Force. With Atlas trying to target Thursday, I know that would make a 48-hour gap between Atlas and Crew-1, but I mean, is ULA involved in these discussions at all, or the Space Force? How does that look with, Space Force teams? They need to be available to support the Atlas launch, and then again, 48 hours later. How's that look? Thank you.
Well, I think there's been some amazing advances in how the ranges have been supporting the missions. I mean, if you've seen the flight rate here at KSC, you've seen how people have really been working hard to support the different missions that people have out there. And the range is constantly working these priorities. And so I know with the static fire coming up, like Benji said, we know they will have to go. I'll let Benji talk here a little bit. He'll have to go and do the normal process, which is to work with the range and with the manifests that they have, and they do a fabulous job of working through it. So, hey, Benji, you want to jump in?
Sure. Well, I don't think a lot necessarily to add. I think Kathy said it exactly right. The range does great things, and we really enjoy working with them and have a tight partnership with them too, and work with them and with the other providers out here who need to use the spaceport. And I think and so we'll continue to work together on the right coordination of things. But honestly, I think that timing would work okay. We can do a launch on Thursday, and then also do our launch on Friday. I think that should be fine. And the same thing as we look at our different activities that happen around the same time as their launch, such as dry dress. We'll make sure everything's deconflicted. But as of right now, I don't see any conflicts that we need to worry about.
And our next question is from Jeff Faust at Space News.
Yeah, question probably for Steve and or Randy. Since this launch will be FAA licensed, I'm curious what differences there will be in sort of the management of the launch process compared to Demo 2, which was not FAA licensed. Thanks.
Yeah, I can take a cut at that, and then we'll let Randy add to it. Yeah, the main differences are in responsibility for public safety, for the launch time frame, and then also the reentry time frame. NASA will be responsible for public safety for the on-orbit phase, and obviously NASA and SpaceX together work hand in hand for crew safety. So that's really the main difference in terms of the licenses. And we have worked hand in hand with the FAA through the test flights, through Demo 1 and Demo 2, side by side, as we, NASA did public safety for those flights. For Ascent, of course, obviously that we work hand in hand with the range, and so we've kind of got this transition handing over to the FAA, and I think it's been a pretty seamless transition so far, and I'll let Randy answer the rest of the question.
Yeah, I agree that it's been a seamless transition. I guess the only thing I would add is that we will have FAA inspectors, but the KSC at the SpaceX facility in Cape Canaveral overseeing the launch like we do for all licensed launches.
And our next question is from Michael Sheets at CNBC.
I have one for, I believe, for Benji, and then the other one for Steve. The first is on Benji's side of things. You mentioned, I believe, launch capability as, recovery landing capability is one of the improvements for Crew Dragon between Demo 2 and Crew-1. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that a little bit more. And the other question for Steve, in terms of the significance of this certification, what it means for the Commercial Crew program to have reached this milestone, and now NASA to be able to return a regular operational status. I wonder if you could a little bit more elaborate on that from your perspective as the program manager. Thank you.
Sure. This is Benji. In terms of launch or return availability or recovery availability on launch, what we did was what you worry about when you're looking at, in case you have to do a launch escape during launch or off the pad, you worry about a number of things. Of course, you hope that never happens. But if you do have to have that happen, one of the things you want to look at is the waves that you're coming down into. So the Dragon does a launch escape, comes down on parachutes, comes into the water. And as it lands on the water, we want to make sure that the wave state isn't such that it could cause damage to the vehicle. And so one of the things we looked at actually even before Demo 2, we started looking at, well, what can we do to increase basically the robustness of the vehicle so that we could withstand, basically expand the kind of weather conditions that we can land in. And we were able to implement some changes to the vehicle itself, to the structure of the vehicle, basically just beefing up some areas of the structure, adding some robustness to the structure itself, without making any significant changes to the overall configuration, so that we could ensure that we could expand that envelope of the kinds of weather that we can land in. And that's what we did here for Crew-1, and that'll be on all Dragons going forward. And so that gives us quite a bit more availability in terms of weather constraints. I'll hand it over to Steve.
Yeah, I would say in terms of certification, it's very exciting for us to get past this milestone and have the agency approve our human rating certification. It's something that we have worked for. I have worked on Commercial Crew in some respect for 10 years, was involved in the requirements development, myself and a small team, including Kathy, way back in 2010, and we sort of laid out the requirements for this program. And then we laid out the way we would address hazards for this program and variances. And then we took that up to the agency level relative to how our human rating certification document. And it took when today is the culmination of years of work. If I look back at what we've done to get here, tremendous amount of analysis, structural, GNC, prop, testing at various facilities on the structure, testing at Plumbrook to make sure we can handle the space environment, doing abort test, including the pad abort and in-flight abort test, and then looking at all that data from those tests and also the Demo 1 uncrewed test flight and then the Demo 2 crewed test flight, and then feeding that data into an analysis of the certification data that SpaceX provided to us. In addition to that, many of our engineers run independent analysis. And so if you just look at the culmination of that work, I couldn't be prouder of the team. Even though we're certified, I don't treat this flight any differently than I would any other flight. We're going to methodically make sure that we're ready to go launch. And then in flight, we'll look at how the vehicle's performing. And then when we return, we'll look at the post-flight data for each phase of flight, and then look at anything that we can do better, and then move forward to Crew 2. So, but it is a really exciting milestone. It's good to get it behind us for now, and then we'll keep marching on and doing the flights safely as we plan to do for each mission.
Our next question is from Joey Roulette at Reuters.
Hey, my question is for Benji and Steve. Since SpaceX and NASA are constantly learning new things about Crew Dragon's performance with every post-certification mission, I was wondering if you could describe how post-certification hardware changes will be carried out and what kind of insight NASA will have into that. And also, Steve and Benji, if you could speak to whether reused Crew Dragon capsules fall under the scope of this certification, and if not, what's the process for that? Thank you.
Well, we'll kind of tag team this. Steve and I are looking at each other. Oh, who should start? I think the question was fundamentally about, rolling in any hardware changes between missions, and then also how reuse plays into certification, if I got that right. And the bottom line is that the processes and the rules of the game that we've established getting to here, actually getting to Demo 2, are the same. We're doing the same things, or we're applying the same rules, the same measurements of are we certified, are we meeting the requirements, and most importantly, are we keeping the crew safe? And so we follow that every time. If we make any change, not just to hardware, but software or processes and operations, whether it's processes in how we build the vehicles or refurbish the vehicles or operate them, all of those things fall under the purview of change to the configuration of the system that we've certified. So when NASA says today we've certified the flight system for flying crew for NASA, what that means is they've certified all of those components together, and we need to ensure that certification remains in force. And to do that, every time we're going to make a change that would impact that certification, we relay that to NASA. We review it together, and NASA ensures that yes, they sign off and say, yeah, we're still in certification. Or if there's a concern, we address it and we rectify it. And so that'll be the case between any missions for any changes that occur, and also that'll be the case as we move into refurbishment. That is also a certified process that ensures certified vehicles coming out of this at the end.
Yeah, just to add what Benji said, I mean, in terms of changes going forward, SpaceX proposes the changes. We bring them in and baseline those. There's a number for Crew 2 already baseline to improve the capability of the vehicle. There's a radio improvement for the rescue beacon. There's a few other ones that are already baseline, and so we know what those are, and we'll just continue to review those and approve those for every flight, whether they be a change to the hardware or software, whether it be Dragon or F9 or the launch pad here. And then in terms of human rating, we human rated this configuration of the vehicle for Crew-1. And that includes reuse as well. We've got to go back and look at a few things for reuse, but we won't go redo that human rating certification for reuse. We have talked to the agency. We've talked to Kathy and Steve Jerzik, the associate administrator, and our agreement is if there's a big block upgrade to the vehicle of some sort, whether it be on F9 or on Dragon, then we'll come back and readdress the human rating certification. But for reuse, it'll be encompassed by this human rating. So.
Our next question is from Morgan McFall Johnson from Business Insider.
Hi, thanks for doing this. This is maybe for Kathy or anybody else who feels like they can answer. I just want to clarify when exactly was all the certification completed? When exactly was the Crew Dragon vehicle itself certified? And what would you say was the most difficult part of that process? Or the most difficult upgrade that you had to implement since Demo 2? Thanks so much.
So what's really cool about what we did today was, we had put out some high-level requirements. Steve kind of talked about it before. That kind of dictated to us what NASA thought was the bar from a safety perspective that both the spacecraft and the launch vehicle and the ground operations and mission operations needed to have for a crew transportation system to the ISS. And so the team, through all the work, that Benji and Steve talked about, what they did was they came in and finished up all that compliance data and verification, all the work to close out and show that the total system, people tend to think it's just a spacecraft, but it's the spacecraft, it's the launch vehicle, it's all the processing on the ground, it's how you do your mission operations, all of that will safely fly our crew up to the International Space Station and back and then recover. There's a whole recovery operation, if you notice. So just a tremendous day that is a culmination of a ton of work that is NASA saying to SpaceX, you have shown us that you can deliver a crew transportation capability that meets our requirements. And so we call it human certification because that's how we say you met the safety kind of crew requirements, but it's really part of this bigger certification strategy that says you can safely fly our crew members to and from the International Space Station. And like Norm said before, you've shown us the data, and we trust you to do that. It's a big trust factor here, right? This is a big step for us, with us doing a lot of work on our side to verify and us working together and helping each other through different phases for us to get to this point, but a big day for us.
Our next question comes from Marina Corin at The Atlantic.
Hi, everyone. This question is for Kathy and Benji. A couple of months ago, the public got to revisit the story of Challenger in great detail with a new documentary. And as we now head into what sounds like an era of fairly regular SpaceX flights to the ISS, what lessons are on your mind from the tragedies of the Space Shuttle program?
Well, I think, anybody that watches any programs or lessons learned, for me, I was there through Columbia too, so people understand, and what you learn is you have to be vigilant, you have to make sure that you're listening to the data, and you're always questioning the data and talking about the data, and your hardware's always talking to you, right? And what's really great about, the system that we have is that with all the launches that we have, the hardware's talking to us through all these missions that the SpaceX folks is having, along with the cargo missions and the crew missions. Now, this is the first time really that we've taken, for crewed missions, taken a commercial launch vehicle like this and using it. And so we're working through that right now, how you make sure you have the time to look through all the data that's there as you're working through these missions, and make sure that you're being super careful that the hardware's not telling you something before you go fly a crewed mission. I think the team's shown that over these last few weeks, as they've worked through looking at the data from multiple missions and working through it, that they've taken those lessons to heart, and they are listening and looking at the hardware and making sure that they do the hard pieces to go and assess and keep looking at the data. This is going to be a big challenge for us, right, to continue to do that. It's sometimes what takes many different kinds of people looking at the data to come to the right solution. And so I think, what we've tried to do is set up the right team, that we're always challenging each other. If you sat through this flight readiness review in the last few days of us getting ready, you'd see that we challenged each other, right? And it's through that process of challenging each other, I think, that we're really taking the lessons that we need to from our flights.
I'll add just a little bit there too, since you asked. Here at Kennedy Space Center, there's a grove of 7 trees that are in a big circle. They're near the old headquarters building on the side, and those 7 trees were planted for the Challenger crew. I think that disaster happened. I think I was in probably like 6th grade when that happened, and I remember it clearly. And I also remember I was working in aerospace when Columbia happened as well. I go to that grove of trees every time I come here to Kennedy, and spend some time there, little meditational prayer, because this is a sacred honor, and we say that. We've said that from SpaceX, and I think other people have used that term. We say sacred because it is sacred. It's what we hold the lives of people in our hands as we transport them into space, stay there with them to be a lifeboat if they need it, and then bring them home to their families. And that is really important. We ask our teams to read the accident reports of the previous accidents that have happened, to take those lessons to heart as well. And we do this, and we and we do this thing where we carry these astronauts and we take it very, very seriously. And as always, we will only fly when we're ready, and we'll stop if we need to.
Yeah, there's, I always loved it. We called Bob and Doug the dads, right? So, every time we see who we're flying, today we all signed today the poster that goes into the elevator and the crew quarters, because it's in our hands. It's in our hands. And we take this very seriously. And the people that sign their names to that poster, just like the people that sign their names to the documents today, know that the crew's lives are in our hands. Very important responsibility.
And thank you to all of our participants for today's call. That's going to wrap things up for us here. NASA's SpaceX Crew-1 mission is targeting a launch to the International Space Station on November 14th at 7:49 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at Launch Complex 39A from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. We will have live launch coverage starting at 3:30 p.m., also Eastern Standard Time. We'll have more to come on this important mission, so follow us online, social media, and on NASA television. You can listen to a replay of this call in about an hour, and we can provide that number to you. It's 866-424-4008. And you can follow more along this mission at nasa.gov/commercial crew. Have a good day. Thank you. You can follow more along this mission at nasa.gov/commercial crew. Have a good day.